Today on the Kawartha Small Business Podcast, we're going to look into the future. I'm Brian Rump,
And I'm Matt Garrity of Matty G Digital.
and this is the Kawartha Small Business Podcast. We have business conversations for the Kawartha commute. This episode is sponsored by Starting Point Digital Marketing. You know you should be doing digital marketing, but never seem to have the time to do it right. Your small business deserves to have good digital marketing that is quick, easy, and inexpensive. Starting Point Digital Marketing provides intentionally simple marketing designed just for you. Head over to startingpointdigitalmarketing.ca to get started now. All right, we're looking into the future, Matt, the future of social media.
You have your crystal ball ready?
I have my crystal ball ready, and we are going to see what happens. We should have produced this episode with more hot takes, like a radio program. But we're just gonna have a conversation. It's not overly set up like that.
We should make note for next time to do a social media hot take, though. But, anyways, the future of social media. This came about because I have been thinking a lot about the documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. I forget when it came out now. Probably 3 or 6 months ago. And I started hearing about it right around that same time, and people were, I suppose, freaking out. And there was a lot of me that didn't want to watch it. And I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe there was a part of me that like feels guilty about working with social media, or the other part of me that was going to be like, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. So I haven't watched that documentary, but I think it's interesting, to talk about the future and sort of where we think things are going. Because you do hear, I've heard lots about it. I've heard different, there's the negative stuff, obviously. Again, I'm not surprised. Like, apparently, it can be addicting.
Yeah.
Apparently, some bad things can happen. There's also a lot of sort of good things about social media. There's ways to control how much of it you consume. So it's a good conversation because, I think people are often will talk about doing social media breaks, or they'll talk about how bad it is, but I don't know that they ever actually fully leave social media.
True. Like a break is just a break. When you're coming back to it, you would assume. The scariest thing that I took from the social dilemma, and it was probably the only really scary thing to me, was they started showing data on when social media was introduced and the almost immediate increase in I can't remember if it was just depression or suicide, but it was alarming and extremely scary from probably any perspective. But as a father that does not have kids that are teenagers yet, like they're 10, like what, 7 years away or something like that. So that's a lot concerning, actually.
Yeah. And I think I'd be interested to like learn more and compare about it. I think there was also, maybe, did it coincide with generally more awareness of depression and anxiety? I know when I was a kid and a teenager, those just weren't things that were ever even talked about or known. I
True.
think there was lots of people who had that. Same with, I think, I don't know how suicide is tracked. Um, is it just a general trend? Are there, there's probably other factors. It's not just social media. I think some of that negative stuff goes back to having the right mental health supports and having the right parental relationships. having the right sort of education and knowledge and limits on social media. It reminds me a bit of, I remember when I was a kid, some people who sort of blamed um, some stuff from earlier generations on like Lord of the Rings books were like the evilest things. And I remember a teacher having a talk with us about the evils of playing Dungeons and Dragons as like a thing that led to like suicide and depression. So I kind of wonder if it's one of those things. When I was in high school, it was like heavy metal was like the devil.
Marilyn
Um,
Manson,
yeah.
Eminem.
So, oh yeah, Eminem. That was So there's these different things. So part of that I think is noise, just from our overall society level. I'm not saying social media is the best thing ever. But then I'm like, yeah, there's dangers to it. There are an infinite number of niches and communities that you could find. Some of them definitely drag you down. I know I've spent lots of time curating my sort of social media preferences and who I follow to try to find the balance of keeping myself sort of critically thinking and knowledgeable, but also positive things, right? And everyone probably has to do that at some level.
Right, absolutely. The thing that I took issue with the most in this documentary was the term documentary is super loose in this case. There is a lot of scripted material in this movie with legitimate actors. There's a guy that was playing throughout that was in Mad Men. Like there's a lot of scripted stuff. So that's pushing a narrative, first of all. And I understand like it's entertainment and they're trying to make it more interesting than just someone that might not be interested in a documentary. But the thing that actually made me the most annoyed, where I almost immediately started dismissing everything that was being said, where there was the main guy that spoke the most was an advocate against social media and had a foundation and all this kind of stuff. That's how that guy makes his livelihood. He does the rounds and goes to conferences and does webinars and speaks. And I can't go into detail in typical us fashion or me fashion. I didn't prepare notes on this guy in the movie in detail, but his whole livelihood and the way he makes money is to advocate against social media.
Yeah, it's the formula. It would be well practiced, well rehearsed. It would like prey on narratives people have, so it's easy to believe it. I think as, if we look at the future of social media, I don't think it's going away. I think the medium has, in some ways it's a new technology for something we've always done, right? The sports bar used to be social media. People would go there Friday nights to connect with their friends because they haven't seen them all week or for a couple weeks. Now you can just see everyone online every day if you want from your phone. So, if we're looking at it from a marketing perspective, and if we look at is Matty G Digital the devil because one of the things you do is social media, but from a sort of more strategic standpoint, what you're doing is helping people connect with their audience, sort of where their audience is. So, yeah, if everyone gets off of social media, then you have to find out sort of where they are, where their eyes are looking to get in front of them. But I don't think, the numbers are so crazy of who uses it. You might change some of those behaviors, but it's still, the phone in your hand, something on there is you're probably going to be looking at for a lot of times.
Absolutely. I'm going to have a hard time not stopping talking in the next 10 or 20 minutes because I can just ramble for the rest of the podcast. So, like what you said with social media, like social media probably isn't ever going away. I don't believe that technology, what's the opposite of evolution?
Oh, oh yeah, like I guess de-evolve or
Yeah.
wind down. Like it's not
Technology,
going to go backwards.
no,
We're not going to suddenly all be, going back to just phones wired to the wall in the kitchen.
no. Technology always evolves. That's the case for the internet. That's going to be the case for social media. Will social media always be there in some form? Absolutely. Will Facebook be here forever? No, 0% chance. Will Instagram be here forever? No, no way. Twitter, none of them. They're all going to go away. They're going to evolve into other things. They're going to be built into other things. Social media will only continue to grow. There was concern or a lot of talk. You heard so many people saying that they were going to go on a social media break after they saw the social dilemma. They were thinking about things differently. The data might be there. I was going to say it's super wrong, but I will say, like, I pulled up some information here from like a completely third party source. In Q3 of 2020, social media, like Facebook active users were down by 100,000 across North America.
Which is what percentage of users? Like, not very much.
Not much, but it's continuing to climb and climb and climb, which is also a funny thing that I hear all the time whenever I'm talking about digital marketing and social media, and people are like, my audience isn't on Facebook, my audience isn't on Instagram. Like, that's wrong, first of all. Like, there's 255 million people today that are actively using it. Your audience is there.
Is there. And that's like, this just reminds me, I teach some marketing at Fleming College. And last year I did what was a pretty awesome lecture on TikTok. And some of my colleagues were like, oh, I don't get TikTok or what this thing is. But the numbers for that were insane. And I was like, your audience is looking there. Like, you should want to try to like see how you can use it. And I know of some people who are in like some professional services, different things, who have just like their income and brand has grown insanely because of like a TikTok. So again, new things are going to come along. It's going to change. The numbers are up. People might not be interacting as much, I think. And I think that maybe just as a understanding of social media, and you could probably shed more light on it, is when Facebook first came out, I think a lot of brands where they wanted likes and follows and comments and conversations. And now people might like, I noticed they don't even hit like or comment, but they might stop and look at it.
Yes.
All sorts of people like, oh, did you hear about this business that is doing this? They saw it on Facebook, but they didn't like or comment on the post, but they saw it. So, it's like Instagram too. You might get 3 likes, but you might have had 200 people see it, and now they are going to know about it and come to your business.
Exactly. And as the marketer, all I care about is people seeing the ad or seeing the piece of marketing. I get people off the excitement of I want more likes, I want more followers, and I like more comments. And those things are important to a degree, but they're not as important as the basic amount of people that will see a piece of marketing.
And I think beyond seeing it, and this is sort of the future too, is the right audience seeing it. And that's where the trick is. And I think marketing, as it evolves and there's new tools, like sometimes maybe there's a new tool and it's easy to do marketing. Um, Other times, as they progress, it gets harder and harder, and you're always sort of um, finding more niches, narrowing it down. I have a book behind me I was thinking about called The Long Tail, and I actually read it before I think I even was on social media, like 15 years ago, and it was talking about the future, about selling more of less things. So um, in the book, I remember they were talking about some books and movies, and just with technology, you're able to find just more niche stuff. So it's not like everyone's buying the same, say, music album, but now everyone's able to find exactly what they want. It could be obscure. So we just have more of that. So as I think people evolve on social media, they're just going to clear out and set their preferences to what they like and what suits them. And, from a marketing standpoint, it's harder, but it's also maybe more effective that you're only going to be getting in front of the people that sort of matter to you. And people are going to see it because they want to see it. I know people who hate ads. I actually like seeing ads for stuff that I actually want and care about.
Absolutely. There's like two of the bigger concerns that I understand but have different opinion on is there was a big concern about it being addictive and why social media is addictive. And it's addictive because the platforms are curating an experience for each user. And they made that seem like it was this awful thing where we were losing freedoms, we were losing the ability to choose and what to learn. This was like a big thing in the movie. And I just kept thinking, like, first of all, nowhere did we sign up for social media and say this is our right to do whatever we want, see whatever we want. Like, we're using someone's specific program that we're signing up for to use. And I really don't understand this, and I don't know. I think I had this opinion before I knew about digital marketing. But me personally, I would much rather see things that are curated to what I may like versus a bunch of stuff that's total nonsense to me. Do I want to see ads for marketing platforms? Yeah, for sure. I'm into that. Do I want to see ads for shows that I like to watch or business things or wellness and CrossFit and all these things? Yeah, I'd much rather see that than seeing an ad for menstrual cramps. Like, what am I going to do with that stuff? I want stuff
Yeah.
curated specific to me. I know, like, that's a big issue that people don't like that. I don't get that. I don't know why you would want the opposite of having an experience that is entirely yours, that you're going to see things that have nothing to do with you. You've never interacted with them. You probably don't like them. Why would you want that experience?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, that's interesting. I think you want good stuff that's curated for you. So you're not just seeing all the noise. And if you want all the noise, you can set up your stuff so that it doesn't share data, or you can manipulate it to see, you know, other things like that, or you could just block them altogether. Like, there's ways to not see ads, or you don't have to do that. Like, it becomes a choice.
And maybe that's why people are obsessed with social media right now versus the newspaper. And nothing against newspapers, but at the same time, you open a newspaper and it's a whole bunch of stuff you don't care about. There's the odd
Yeah.
ad in there that's interesting to you. There's probably lots of articles that are interesting to you, but most of a newspaper you don't care about. So why would you look at a newspaper? But you open up your social media, your Facebook, your Instagram, you're seeing stuff that's tailored to you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. And I think it's fascinating just from a historical standpoint, because I think different newspapers, you know, we've seen a condensing as an industry, but print media, there would be lots of niche magazines spouting sometimes the same hateful or negative things. You would have still tried to get in the right magazines for your product that you're advertising to. Before a lot of print, you would have had, if you're worried about negative or conspiracy theories or wackos, they would travel from town to town, right, with their soapbox and try to round up an audience to say things. So, again, we're not dealing with new things. It's just new technologies. It's something we're talking about, I think, a little bit more, or recognizing that you're getting bombarded with messages from everywhere, and yeah, they influence you and your behavior, but you also can make some choices to curate that for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And then The other thing that I think was getting people up in arms, and this is the thing that I'm wicked divided on, and I think this is ultimately the biggest conversation around the future of social media. And it was about social media being a beacon for which misinformation and maybe unpopular opinion and things that like censorship. So basically, it's a way for people to pass around misinformation and often could be hateful things as well. So this is where I'm
Yeah.
affected. But
This is an interesting conversation, but like again, it's like tale as old as time, right? I don't know that we've ever had a glory days of great information.
mm,
Um, I don't really want to get into unpacking too much of our colonial white supremacy state that we've built, but it's not like every small town newspaper hasn't whitewashed every story forever. Uh, we talk about, we can give all sorts of examples of that. So I think there's, misinformation is not a new thing. Hateful message spreading is not a new thing either. Like,
right,
if you look at history of say the Catholic Church and how the world like has been built, there's all sorts of things we could unpack and talk about that were just not true. I think part of the good part about social media that also brings these things to light is it's easier to hear more voices that just identify and bring these things to light
sure.
a little bit more, and it connects you to information to sort of research it to try to find out what the real facts are or what really happened.
That's the problem, though. And I think that's the biggest problem in all of this is that I don't have a problem with seeing misinformation, hateful stuff. It's not right. I don't like it. I won't share it. I won't do it. But it's not the platform's responsibility, in my opinion, to censor it. It's my responsibility as a user or a human being to decipher which is true, which is not, which is a conspiracy, which is legitimate, what needs more research, what's fun, what's hateful, what's super inappropriate. The problem, most people maybe are stupid and will not do that. And that's, I think, the biggest problem because I know who you are. I think you know who I am. Like, you would research it. You'd like spend a bit more time understanding what is this article about. I get all the time, like people, they'll send me a headline of an article. I'm like, did you read the article? Like, it explains in detail actually of something a lot different than this headline. So like I'll spend the time like reading an article and like really understanding what the real issue is before making a decision. Most people won't do that, and that I think is the biggest concern with the hate speech and the misinformation on social media.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to education, critical thinking, and again, it's your own choice, right? And I don't know really the answer of how to get more people to think critically. But again, this has happened throughout time, right? People have done some crazy things or followed some crazy people
Yeah,
because they don't seek that out. I think it's probably getting better, but it feels like it's getting worse. There's also some neat data and studies I've heard where sometimes the noisiest stuff gets a lot of play,
mm,
but it doesn't actually impact long-term behaviors, which again may be a topic beyond the scope of our small business podcast um, here. But I think we're looking at social media. I think as a tool, it's not going to go away. As a marketer, as a business, you're always going to need to like find more of your audience. You're always going to need to be trying to define more who your audience is. You're going to be trying to expand that audience a little bit, or just do better with the audience that you're with. So it's really up to you to use these tools to the best of your ability.
For sure. What do you think about censorship and regulating social media?
I think, again, I don't really agree with certain censorship. I do think that blatant hate speech is bad. We've been down that road before. So I can understand some of that. I think if we try to over regulate, the government's not the best at doing that. I also think that, some of the bad hate stuff, I think it should be banned, but that to me would be a business decision from the platform. Because to be honest, if I logged on and all I was getting was stuff from the KKK or racist crap, I just wouldn't be on there.
Yeah.
So I would go look for the one that doesn't have that. So, I think I would prefer a world where we don't have to regulate it, and that people would sort of regulate it themselves. To Because I, in general, believe that most people want to be better and sort of progress, as humans or as and businesses as well. I'm not going to advertise somewhere as a business where somebody might be seeing hate speech next to my ad, right? I don't want to be associated with that. So that's sort of the free market capitalist way to sort of weed that stuff out.
Yeah. Now, I'm against censorship. I'm against regulation. I think you could probably tear this apart, but I think more likely than not could be very libertarian. So I don't want anyone getting involved in that type of stuff. I think censorship can start to lead to like certain biases. Regulations are probably the same way and leading mostly people leading with their wallets more than anything else. So I don't like the idea of it. However, I'm very open to the conversation of it because I do recognize, like you said, we've seen where hate speech goes and what that's resulted in. And it's like, damn, could we have done something to prevent that? I don't know if we could. I don't know if social media is the enabler or the thing that's going to restrict that. But I'm open to that conversation. I'm more open to it. I talked to a friend and a mentor that works for a very large digital marketing company that's associated with a newspaper. So he talks a lot about like what newspapers have to go through and like regulations there and editorial boards and all these different things where they're very much liable for the things that they say. That's a little bit different because those companies are usually owned within like the country. It's different with social media. So you're going to
Yeah.
social media, Twitter being owned, I think in San Francisco or something like that, and then someone saying something inappropriate in Europe, and it's going to be a whole big issue. I'm open to the conversation. There's the personal side of me that really doesn't like it. I want it to be open source. I want it to be a beacon for conversation and the ability for people to say anything and us have the opportunity to dissect it and disagree civilly and continue down that path. But I understand where the concern is with the hate speech and the misinformation specifically, because not to get too much into a conspiracy and the whole deep state thing, I think there's a concern about cyber warfare and security from a misinformation perspective from foreign bodies.
Oh yeah, that's since time immemorial, right? We
Yeah.
used to go drop flyers from airplanes, right? Like, here's what's really happening, and all sorts of that stuff. And I think it goes back to voting with your wallet,
Mm,
personal responsibility, and then again, as brands and businesses, it's finding your actual audience and you know uplifting those platforms and putting the focus on that stuff. It's never going to be perfectly squeaky clean. Utopia doesn't exist, so we're not going to really get there. Um, so yeah, I think that's sort of some of the places where we're going.
Yeah. Ultimately, we are probably heading toward regulation eventually at some point, probably in my lifetime. And as a business owner and marketer, it's not a negative thing, actually. All it does, it will eventually kind of clean up those platforms that have very distinct audiences that we know that we can get in front of. And to your point earlier, get away from including our ad beside something that's terribly negative. Because ultimately, social media is a truly fantastic tool for brand awareness and developing an online presence. The audiences are there. There's people still using these things en masse. It's growing for the most part. Ones that are going to tail off are going to be picked up by new ones. And we, as business owners and marketers, are going to evolve. And it's a fantastic tool because there's so much data there and granular data that we can get in front of very specific people if we wanted to. And that's exactly what we want. If we have a niche business, which you probably have, believe it or not, we can talk all day about that. We want to be in front of specific people. We don't want to be in front of every single person across the Kawartha Lakes. We want 3,000 to 5,000 people that we know are interested in this stuff to know who we
are. Awesome. That sounds like an episode to me. If you'd like to reach out, if you want to weigh in on the future of social media, let us know at setitup@kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca.